She thought a few carefully chosen words would be enough to have the man removed from first class. Just a little act, a slight show of discomfort, and everything would unfold exactly as she expected. But within minutes, as the man calmly reached into his pocket and pulled something out, the entire atmosphere on the plane shifted. No one, not even her, could have predicted what was about to happen. Karen Whitmore, a middle-aged woman, stepped into the first-class cabin with the air of someone who belonged there. Her designer dress, perfectly polished heels, and an expensive leather handbag, everything about her radiated status. To Karen, flying first class wasn't just a choice. It was a part of her identity. But then she stopped. Her eyes scanned the seats, and in an instant, her expression changed. Someone was already sitting next to her. A black man. He was dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, sitting with quiet confidence, his eyes fixed on his laptop screen, completely unbothered by his surroundings. And that alone unsettled Karen. A flicker of hesitation flashed across her face before she quickly masked it. She pulled out her seat a little too forcefully, letting it knock against the man's armrest. No reaction. Not even a glance. Karen pressed her lips together, scanning the cabin for someone, anyone who could correct this mistake. A few seconds later, she plastered on a practiced smile, raising her hand ever so slightly. Flight attendant. Jessica Monroe, the lead flight attendant, appeared swiftly, her voice polite but professional. "How can I help you, ma'am?" Karen tilted her head slightly, feigning mild confusion, as if she had just noticed a small but inconvenient issue. "I think there's been a mix-up," she said, her tone light yet pointed. "I believe this gentleman is in the wrong seat." The cabin seemed to quiet just a little. A few passengers glanced in their direction, saying nothing, but their eyes said everything. Jessica blinked and quickly pulled out her tablet to check the seating assignments. A second later, she looked up, offering Karen a courteous smile. "I've checked, ma'am. He's in the correct seat." Karen's eyes flickered, her lips twitching for just a fraction of a second before she smoothed her expression again. "Oh, is that so?" She let out a short, forced laugh, but the tension in her voice was unmistakable. "I just assumed." But no, this wasn't over. Karen wasn't someone who gave up easily. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if she were sharing something private. "Well, is it possible for me to switch seats?" Jessica's brows knit together. "Are you uncomfortable?" Karen lowered her voice even further. "It's just that I think I'd feel more comfortable sitting somewhere else." She didn't say why. She didn't need to. Jessica understood. And so did Marcus, the man who had remained silent this entire time. And then came the moment no one expected. For the first time, Marcus slowly shut his laptop. The cabin felt heavier, as if the very air had thickened. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a leather case and flipped it open. A golden shine reflected under the cabin lights. An FBI badge. The plane went completely still. A few passengers widened their eyes. Others whispered. And Karen went pale. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his voice calm yet razor-sharp. "Would you like to file an official complaint, ma'am?" And in that moment, Karen realized she had made the biggest mistake of her life. That moment stretched on like a skipped heartbeat. The entire cabin fell into silence. Karen Whitmore felt her throat go dry, yet she couldn't tear her eyes away from the object gleaming in Marcus's hand. An FBI badge. No, this couldn't be happening. Karen blinked rapidly, as if hoping that when she opened her eyes again, everything would reset. That this man would just be another ordinary passenger, that she could still turn this situation in her favor. But as she glanced around, the faces surrounding her were no longer faceless, indifferent strangers. They were watching. They were waiting to see what she would do next. Her back stiffened. A wave of heat flushed through her body, not from anger, but from something far worse, fear. But Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat easily. She took a slow, deliberate breath, steadying herself. She needed to regain control, to use the voice she had perfected over the years, a voice that could make things sound reasonable, smooth over misunderstandings, and turn the narrative in her favor. "Oh." She let out a soft, breathy chuckle, forcing a pleasant expression. "That's interesting. I had no idea. I didn't mean anything by it, really." Marcus didn't react immediately. He simply observed her, his expression unreadable, not angry, not challenging, just watching. Like he had seen this play out 100 times before. Jessica, the lead flight attendant, still stood beside them, hands resting lightly on her tablet. She didn't intervene. No one rushed to Karen's aid. No one scrambled to adjust things to her liking. And that was what terrified her the most. Every other time in her life, a simple complaint from her would have been enough. A raised eyebrow, a subtle disapproving glance, and things would fall into place as they should. But not this time. This time, things weren't going her way. And she knew exactly why. This time, she had picked the wrong man to challenge. Karen clenched her handbag tighter, forcing her posture straight, but her thoughts scrambled. She couldn't find a way out of this without making it worse. And as she wrestled with the reality unfolding around her, Marcus simply tilted his head slightly and, as if this were nothing more than a minor inconvenience, opened his laptop again and resumed working. No gloating, no grandstanding. He simply continued, as if she didn't exist. And that was worse than anything else. The cabin gradually returned to normal. A few quiet murmurs rippled through the air, but no one spoke up for her. No one attempted to ease the growing humiliation coursing through her veins. Karen turned toward the window, but all she saw reflected in the glass was herself. She couldn't let this be the end of it. She wouldn't. Her fingers curled into fists, palms damp with sweat. This wasn't over. Not yet. With that thought, she reached out and pressed the call button again. Karen withdrew her hand the moment she pressed the button, as if the act itself gave her back a shred of control. But it didn't. Her heart still pounded against her ribs, each beat thudding with an anxious rhythm she couldn't ignore. Jessica returned, her sharp gaze locked onto Karen, a flicker of something behind her eyes, expectation. Like she already knew where this was going. "Is there something else I can assist you with, ma'am?" Her voice remained professional, but the patience had worn thin. Karen leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice as if she were about to disclose a sensitive matter. "I just don't feel comfortable," she emphasized each word carefully, her eyes flicking toward Marcus, hoping Jessica would understand without her having to say it outright. Jessica didn't respond immediately. She just looked at Karen. Steady, unwavering. As if waiting to see if Karen truly had the audacity to say it aloud. The air inside the cabin shifted once again. The other passengers continued to act as though they weren't paying attention, but Karen knew. They were listening. And worse, Marcus was too. This time, Marcus didn't pretend to be focused on his laptop. He sat up straight, tilting his head slightly, his gaze calm yet razor sharp, like he had witnessed this scene unfold countless times before. Jessica took a deep breath, her patience now completely worn thin. "You say you're uncomfortable. What exactly do you mean by that?" Karen felt her throat tighten. She couldn't say it outright, but she couldn't take it back either. She had pushed things too far to turn around now. "I just think." She hesitated, pretending to choose her words carefully, but in reality, she was scrambling for any way to cling to the last shred of control she had left. "It would probably be better if I sat somewhere else. I don't want to cause any trouble." Didn't want to cause trouble? A soft chuckle rippled through the cabin. A man a few rows ahead raised an eyebrow at her, watching like he was witnessing a live drama unfolding before his eyes. A young woman across the aisle casually lifted her phone, pretending to check her messages, but it was obvious she was recording. Karen felt heat rush to her face. Jessica held her gaze a moment longer, then opened her tablet. "There are no available seats in first class," she said, her voice cool and composed. Karen inhaled sharply. "What about economy?" Jessica blinked. A few passengers exchanged glances. Karen lifted her chin, trying to salvage whatever dignity she had left. "If there's an open seat in economy, I'm happy to switch with him." This time, no one even tried to hide their reactions. A quiet laugh escaped from someone behind her. A middle-aged man shook his head in disbelief. A young woman pressed her lips together to suppress a laugh, but the amused glint in her eyes gave her away. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if forcing himself to remain calm. When he opened them again, there was something new in his gaze. Not just composure, but restraint. Jessica blinked, then made a decision. A decision that didn't require any more politeness. "Just so I understand," she said, voice crisp and deliberate. "You want me to ask a paying first-class passenger to leave his assigned seat and move to economy, simply because you feel uncomfortable?" Her words cut through the air like a knife. Karen blinked rapidly. She could feel the weight of the stairs around her now, no longer neutral. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Normally, when she complained, people adjusted. They fixed things for her. But this time, no one was on her side. This time, they saw exactly what she was trying to do. Jessica tilted her head slightly, waiting. Karen felt rage swell in her chest. No, she wouldn't be humiliated like this. She couldn't lose, and so she played her last card. She looked at Jessica, then at Marcus. She inhaled deeply and delivered her final calculated line, soft as a feather, heavy as a stone. I don't feel safe. The entire cabin froze. Marcus didn't move, but something shifted in his gaze. No longer just calm, but wary. Jessica too stiffened. She no longer looked simply irritated. She looked disbelieving. Somewhere in the back, a man muttered under his breath, "Oh, we've reached this part, huh?" And then, for the first time since this ordeal began, Marcus spoke. His voice was deep, steady, unhurried, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're saying you don't feel safe because I'm sitting next to you?" Karen kept her expression composed, but her heart was racing. Marcus slowly placed both hands on his lap, his gaze never leaving Karen. A long silence stretched between them before he calmly reached into his pocket once again and pulled out his leather case. The FBI badge gleamed under the cabin lights, but this time no one reacted as they had before, because this time everyone understood. Karen had gone too far. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted, like the air pressure had suddenly changed. Karen's breathing grew shallow, but she forced a thin, uneasy smile, trying to mask the growing dread creeping up her spine. She could feel it now, the invisible yet undeniable shift in the room. Just moments ago, she had been the one in control. A privileged passenger, simply requesting a small adjustment. But now she was no longer in control. She was now at the center of a story she could no longer dictate. Jessica, the lead flight attendant, narrowed her eyes slightly, as if trying to confirm whether she had truly heard what she thought she had. "Are you saying you don't feel safe sitting next to this passenger?" The question was direct, unfiltered. Marcus, who had maintained his composed silence all this time, tilted his head slightly, his gaze sharp, unwavering. Karen's chest tightened, but she couldn't back down now. She couldn't appear weak. She couldn't let them see she had lost control. She lifted her chin slightly, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I didn't say that," she emphasized. But her tone betrayed her. "I just believe that on a flight, every passenger has the right to feel comfortable and safe. If I don't feel comfortable, shouldn't the airline accommodate that?" A soft laugh drifted from a few rows back. "Oh, come on," a middle-aged man in a dark suit muttered, amusement laced with scorn. "You really think you can say that and not have everyone see exactly what you're doing?" Karen snapped her head toward him, her gaze icy. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I'm sure you don't," the man replied, smirking. Heat surged to Karen's face, a mixture of humiliation and fury twisting inside her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Usually, she was the one being catered to, the one people rushed to accommodate. But now, she was the one being called out. Jessica turned back to her, no longer patient, no longer pretending to be impartial. "Ma'am," her voice was firm, almost clipped, "I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you saying you feel threatened by this passenger?" This was the moment. Karen's decision here would change everything. If she said yes, she would escalate this situation to a whole new level. An accusation like that on a commercial flight wasn't just an inconvenience. It would come with consequences. Consequences she might not be ready for. But if she backed down, if she admitted she was making a fuss over nothing, then she would lose. Karen swallowed hard, but her throat remained dry. And then, unable to bear the weight of the moment, she did what people like her always did when caught in a corner. She bent the truth just enough. She took a slow breath, then shrugged lightly. "I didn't say I felt threatened." She lifted her chin, her gaze flicking between Jessica and Marcus. "I'm just saying, I don't feel comfortable." A heavy silence blanketed the cabin. Jessica inhaled deeply before exhaling slowly, as if reining in the last of her patience. "All right, then." She straightened her posture, her voice calm, unwavering. "Then let me be absolutely clear. Our airline does not remove a passenger from their legally assigned first-class seat just because someone else doesn't feel comfortable. If you can't accept that, I'd be more than happy to assist you in deplaning right now. A murmur rippled through the cabin. A woman 2 rows back lightly tapped her seatmate's hand as if anticipating the next act in an unfolding drama. Karen froze. Get off the plane? She blinked rapidly, scrambling to reclaim control over a situation that was slipping further and further from her grasp. The eyes in the cabin were no longer darting away in polite discretion. Now, they were locked onto her, watching, judging, waiting to see what she would do next. And then, something unthinkable happened. Marcus, who had remained largely silent, calmly lifted his laptop and placed it on the tray table in front of him. His fingers intertwined, thumbs barely touching, a relaxed but deliberate gesture. His eyes met Karen's, and for the first time she felt something cold rush down her spine. Because his gaze, it wasn't angry, it wasn't triumphant, it wasn't mocking. It was simply observing, like he had seen this before. Like this wasn't the first time he had been put in this position. Like he already knew exactly how this would play out. And then, as if delivering the final devastating blow, he spoke. His voice was steady, calm, but it carried the weight of steel. Would you like to file an official complaint, ma'am? Karen's mouth opened to respond, but then she hesitated, because this time, his question wasn't just rhetorical. This time, it mattered, because if she said yes, she would have to face the consequences of her own words. Karen swallowed hard, the invisible grip around her throat tightening. She had driven this situation to the edge, but now she was no longer in control of where it would go next. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't fidget, didn't break eye contact. How many times had he witnessed this scene before? How many times had someone like Karen tried to wield power and privilege to dictate someone else's fate? But what she hadn't anticipated was that this time, the power wasn't in her hands. She blinked rapidly, desperately searching for a way out. But the faces around her were waiting. She could feel the weight of judgment pressing in from every direction, not just from Marcus or Jessica, but from everyone who had watched this unfold from the very beginning. A man 2 rows up shook his head and clicked his tongue in disapproval. A young woman held up her phone, her eyes glued to the screen. Karen didn't need anyone to tell her, she already knew. Someone was recording this. Fear slithered down her spine. But she couldn't lose. She couldn't admit she was wrong. She couldn't let her name be dragged through the mud. Karen inhaled sharply, trying to summon the voice that had always worked in her favor. No complaint, she said, but her voice lacked its former strength. Marcus kept his gaze on her, but this time he nodded. Slowly, like he already knew that's what she would say. A quiet laugh drifted from the back of the cabin. A young woman clapped, softly, barely audible, but just loud enough for Karen to hear. Heat crept up Karen's face. She had never been humiliated like this before. Jessica cleared her throat, as if signaling the official end of the conversation. Very well, ma'am, she said. Then I will expect you to remain in your seat. If there are any further disruptions, I will have no choice but to remove you from this flight. Karen clenched her teeth, but she knew. She had no choice but to nod. Jessica held her gaze for a second longer than necessary, then turned and walked away. Marcus said nothing. He simply reopened his laptop, fingers tapping against the keys as if nothing had happened. But Karen knew she had lost. Yet, the worst was still to come. A vibration buzzed through her handbag. A message? Someone was trying to reach her. She lifted her phone and glanced at the screen. Karen, what is going on? I just saw a video. Tell me this isn't you. Karen's blood ran cold. Her eyes widened, fingers trembling as she tapped the screen. No. But as she clicked the link, her worst fear became reality. A video, no longer than a minute, but already with tens of thousands of views. The title slapped her across the face. Woman tries to remove black man from first class until he flashes his FBI badge. Karen's grip tightened around her phone, her knuckles turning white. She scrolled down to the comments, heart hammering against her ribs. Oh, karma is sweet. She really thought she was going to get away with it. I hope she enjoys her internet fame. Wait, wasn't she on the board of the Marston Foundation? Someone needs to call them ASAP. Karen's stomach dropped. Her world wasn't just crumbling, it was going up in flames. Did she really think she could get away with this? Honestly, it's kind of pathetic. Hope she enjoys her internet fame. Karen's vision blurred. A wave of dizziness crashed over her. This couldn't be real. There was no way this was spreading this fast. But when she glanced around the cabin, she realized something even worse. It wasn't just spreading online. It was spreading right here, right in front of her eyes. Passengers were whispering to each other. Some stole quick glances at her before turning away, covering their mouths to hide quiet chuckles. Others scrolled through their phones, maybe even reading the very same comments she had just seen. She wanted to scream, to protest, to explain that this was all just a misunderstanding. But how could she? How could she argue against her own words? The things she had said, the implications she had made. They were now recorded, permanent. Karen's fingers trembled as she loosened her grip on her phone. She had thought she could control the situation, but now, she was the one being judged. And the most terrifying part? The plane hadn't even landed yet. And she had no idea what was waiting for her once she stepped off. Karen clutched her phone tightly, her fingers shaking as she scrolled through the screen, but she couldn't bring herself to tap on anything. She needed to see how far the video had spread. But each time she refreshed, the numbers skyrocketed. Tens of thousands of views, then hundreds of thousands, within minutes. Next to her, Marcus remained unfazed, his fingers tapping lightly on his keyboard, completely immersed in his work, as if none of this mattered. No glances, no reaction, no sign of smug satisfaction or anger. Just business as usual. And that was what made Karen feel like something was crushing her from the inside. She wasn't in control anymore. She wasn't the one people admired or catered to. She was the subject of hushed conversations. The target of stares that no longer masked their contempt. She could hear it, soft murmurs spreading around the cabin. A woman 2 rows back leaned in to whisper to her seatmate. Honestly, she got exactly what she deserved. Who does she think she is? Karen swallowed hard, forcing herself to block out the voices. But they were everywhere, buzzing in her ears. Jessica, the lead flight attendant, walked past. No polite smile, no ounce of sympathy. Just a subtle warning glance, enough to make it clear, no more complaints. Karen felt herself being pushed into a corner with no way out. She couldn't move, she couldn't speak. And then, things got even worse. A faint chime came from her phone. A text from an old friend. Karen, I can't believe this. Is this really you? Karen's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers fumbled as she unlocked her phone, and instantly, more notifications flooded in. What the hell did you do? I just saw the video. Oh my God, Karen, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how fast this is spreading? Please tell me this isn't you. A chill washed over her. It felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over her head. She couldn't breathe. The unease in her stomach twisted into full-blown panic. Frantically, she opened Twitter. Maybe she could control the damage. Maybe she could fix this. But the moment the page loaded, her stomach dropped. Her name was trending, Karen Whitmore. A full-blown storm of outrage, reposts, and ridicule surrounded the name she had carefully built for herself over the years. Another entitled Karen who thinks the rules don't apply to her. She thought she could manipulate the system. Not in this era. Nothing is more satisfying than watching someone like this finally face consequences. Karen's world wasn't just collapsing. It was burning. Wait, wasn't she part of the Marston Foundation? I don't think someone like that should be representing a charity. Karen's heart seized. The Marston Foundation. For 15 years, she had been a board member of one of the country's most well-respected charities, a foundation built on social justice, diversity, and fighting discrimination. She took a sharp breath and hurriedly opened her email. A new message. From James Rollins, chairman of the board. Subject, urgent discussion regarding your current situation. Karen's hands trembled as she clicked the email open. Karen, I'm sure by now you've seen what's happening on social media. I won't sugarcoat this. The board has met, and we have unanimously decided that we must request your immediate resignation to protect the integrity of this organization. If you do not step down voluntarily, we will be issuing a formal statement by tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, but we cannot allow this to reflect on the foundation. James, the world tilted around her. Karen gripped the armrest of her seat, struggling to keep herself grounded. Everything she had built, her reputation, her influence, the respect she had commanded, All of it was crumbling right before her eyes. She wanted to scream, to shout that this was a misunderstanding, that people were overreacting. But how could she argue? She had done this to herself. And the worst part? The plane still hadn't landed. She had no idea what awaited her when she stepped off in Washington, D.C. She wanted to run, to disappear. But deep down she knew one undeniable truth. The storm was just beginning. Karen practically bolted out of the plane the moment the doors opened. Gone was the carefully curated poise, no more graceful posture, no more composed demeanor, no more quiet authority. She just needed to get out. But no matter how fast she moved, she couldn't outrun herself. The walk to the baggage claim felt like the longest walk of her life. She kept her head down, moving quickly, refusing to look up. But she didn't need to look. She could feel it. The stares, the whispers, people passing by, glancing down at their phones, then looking up at her with curiosity. Or worse, with recognition. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay composed. But as she approached baggage claim, the fear in her chest turned to full-blown panic. Because just ahead, a small group of reporters stood waiting. Cameras, microphones, faces filled with anticipation. A female reporter scanned her phone, then suddenly looked up. Her eyes lit up. The woman from the viral video is expected to arrive soon. We're going to try to get a statement. Karen's body locked up. And then, the reporter's eyes met hers. Like a tidal wave, it crashed over her. That's her! It's Karen Whitmore. Karen felt her blood turn to ice. No. No. But there was no time to think. Footsteps rushed toward her. Microphones thrust into her face. Cameras flashed to life. A reporter shouted, "Do you have anything to say about what happened on your flight? Do you regret trying to have a paying passenger removed from his seat? What's your response to the Marston Foundation demanding your resignation?" Karen was surrounded. Camera shutters clicked nonstop. There was no escape, no exit strategy, no one coming to rescue her from the storm she had created. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. And then, a new sound. Her phone buzzed violently in her handbag. Another message. With shaky hands, she pulled it out, her eyes scanning the short text flashing on the screen. "We need to talk. Immediately." The sender, her husband. Karen felt the floor drop beneath her. The plane had landed, but her nightmare had only just begun. Sometimes we believe that power, money, or status can shield us from the consequences of our actions. But in today's world, where a single video can spread within seconds, the truth will always find a way to surface. Karen Whitmore thought she could control the narrative. But in reality, she was just a chapter in a much bigger story. A story about justice, about people no longer bowing to outdated privileges. And Marcus Hale? He never sought confrontation. He simply sat there, unshaken in the eye of the storm, knowing that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Because justice doesn't need to shout, it only needs to be seen. If this story made you think, share it with others. Let more people see that even the smallest actions can create real change. And don't forget, hit like, share, and subscribe to Aiva Stories so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Let's create a world where truth always wins. See you in the next video. Bookmark, go back.